Hey everybody, this is Brent Price, CTO of IndySoft. I'm coming to you from my office on Daniel Island in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm here in our new 5,000 square foot training center. We're all really excited to have. Unfortunately, we have no one to train because of what's been going on, everybody knows. But anyway, I hope everybody's staying safe. We've got the IndySoft team here today, and we're going to go over the new 12.1 feature set. We're really excited about it. We all have been hunkered down, working real hard to bring you some new features and a lot of new things. On that, we're also excited. We've tripled our development staff here at IndySoft over the past couple of years, and we have a lot of new products coming out. We have 12 actually that should be released this year. So we're super pumped about that, but obviously our main baby here is the IndySoft 12.1 client, and that's what we're going to show today. So I'm going to start off showing you about our new location editor. Currently, over the last 22 years, we've always had a two-tier system for locating a piece of equipment, be it a storage location or somewhere on the floor, or maybe in your commercial lab or wherever. And that served us well, but we've had customers that have been asking for a more tiered approach. So we've redesigned the system to have a global system-wide way to do locations, however, use more of a hierarchical type scenario. So you can have more than just two tiers. You can now have, say, a company, and then is it in lab? Which lab is it? Is it in the closet? Is it an electronics bench? That sort of thing. So this allows you to now basically set an unlimited amount of items. So you can do, for example, if I wanted to go a drawer in the bench, I could now say a drawer A, pick a icon. We give you a bunch of icons here you can choose from. And okay, and so now that is a location that you can store your equipment or say where it is. So this is a really cool way of also visualizing your data. So with the new system, we have a map maker. So you can basically take your location. In this case, I've just took our blueprint here at our training center and made it into like a lab. And it's pretty neat how you do that. Let's show you. We have this thing called indoor map management. And you'll see here, this is just a blueprint that I took, and then I'll open it up here in our map editor. We're a little limited in space, so I have to shrink it a little bit. But basically, I'm going to unpin this. You've got shapes like, let's take a frame here. And so you can take a blueprint and then put over the blueprint each room. And then you can cut and paste that. And there's all sorts of objects that you can use to build your layout. So once you do this, you shouldn't have to do it again. You just set it up one time and set your locations. So when you do set it up, you can also go to properties and you can say the area for it. So we could say, Cal Lab 2. And then you pick a location. And the location is locations that you've already set up. And you can say that's what represents this area. So as equipment flows in and out of rooms, especially using our new RFID technology that's coming later this year, then you can use this to track that equipment very easily and see where it is. So I'm not going to save this for now. Let's get back. So you can see I did IndySoft Training Center. That's what it looks like after I removed the blueprint. And then I also did a couple sub areas. So I said Cal Lab 1 and Cal Lab 2. So when you set that up, you'll notice when I go to in lab, it shows me, first of all the equipment in that area. That's all listed here. Shows days until due, say for calibration, so you can see exactly in an area where things are due. You can then click on an area, and you'll see in this case, in the Cal Lab 1, I've got 3 pieces of equipment. I can double click and then zoom in on that particular area. See, one's at my electronic bench and 2 are in the closet. So obviously this can apply to a factory, to a commercial lab, and it's just a real neat way to visualize where your equipment is. the other thing to not worry about is if you do have an existing system that's completely built on our old style, we're not removing that. That is still available. The software will still work as planned. However, if you like this new system and you want to move to it, we give you an easy way to do that. It's just simply import existing locations. So it asks you a few questions. Do you want to remove your existing locations? No. Yes, I would like to import my existing crib bin location sublocations. And it'll also update your equipment with the new system if you'd like. I'm going to say no in this case. So it's just going to build that. It'll probably take just a few seconds. You'll see it went through and created this new XYZ company. This came from a new area here and built that. So it simply builds by company, and then is it storage or not, and then the two levels, in this case, location and then sublocation. But then you can simply go and keep building with that. You can create a new area like we did before. So so that's a pretty quick explanation there. Oh yes, also I forgot to mention, you can also per location specify employees and employee groups. So if I, for example, wanted to say in CalLab 1, and you'll see there I am, I'm an employee in that area. So that way you can actually get alerts and notifications when things are due in an area. It can actually send to the employee that is assigned to that location or employee groups. So it's kind of a neat way to automate notifications that way. If I go back to the main client, the only other thing to maybe look at is user preferences. One question users have as well, if I'm now able to see all of this, these particular areas, it's kind of too much. So every employee now can have their own base location. If I work out of a particular area, say CalLab 1, I can simply save that, and now whenever I go pick, say I'm going to check something out or check it back in, it'll go right down to that location. Also, if I'm checking something out, I can also have a default. So if I'm always at a certain place, maybe checking out something to a work cell or whatever, then I can say this is where I normally am, and I don't have to specify that as an option. That's a quick rundown of the new location system. I'm going to now pass it down to Bill and let him talk about our new mobile apps. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhett. Welcome to IndySoft Mobile Tools. This is IndySoft's new utility app that is available for download from the App Store or Google Play for Android. To access the features, you first need to sign in and then select your company. Now that we're authenticated, you will see along the bottom that we have 4 primary features: certificates, employee, equipment, and signature. With respect to certificates, we can see what is coming due for calibration and browse previously calibrated equipment. For this demo, I'm going to show you how to scan a label affixed to an equipment item that will pull down its latest certificate of calibration. To do that, all we need to do is scan the QR code found on the item. The app will then use the embedded company and equipment ID information to fetch the certificate. And from here, we can review it, and we can also share it with others by tapping on it. I'm not going to demo the employee feature, but that's where you can do things like upload a profile picture of yourself. The next feature on the tab bar is equipment. This feature allows us to quickly and easily associate an image with an item. To do that, all you need to do is search for the item. And in this case, I'm going to search for calipers. And here I've got 2 items. One does not have a photo associated with it. So I'll simply tap on it. I can take any appropriate photo and save it. Lastly, the app includes a signature feature that will allow a technician to sign off on a calibration event that can then be included on the certificate of calibration, or sign off on a work order when you've completed your job. In this case, I'm signing off on a work order that was generated by the IndySoft client application. As mentioned previously, we are answering questions as they come in, so if you have any, please type your question in the Q&A box. Next, Angelina is going to be going over the Met Connect. Take it away, Angelina.
Thanks, Bill. So now I am going to be talking to you about Met Connect support in IndySoft. So in version 12.1, we have introduced a new feature which allows you to seamlessly import Fluke MetCal data into IndySoft using Met Connect. The first place to start with this setup is to go into your user location settings, like such. And when this dialog pops up, you will notice we have a new tab at the very bottom named Met Connect. In here, this is where you input your Met Connect server information so that we can make a successful connection through IndySoft. You will need your Met Connect server and port, as well as the Met Connect API key, which should be provided to you by Fluke. Once you have input this information, go ahead and save and close this. You can adjust your mappings between IndySoft and the Met Connect database in your system-wide preferences. To access this, you can open up your Options Flyout tab. Under Preferences, under Configuration and Admin, you will see the System-Wide option. In here, we also have a new tab named Met Connect. Click on that, and you will see this is where all of those fields are mapped from the Met Connect database to the IndySoft database. So for example, we have these defaulted here already for you. Tolerance plus in IndySoft matches tolerance positive in Met Connect. Tolerance minus in IndySoft matches tolerance negative in Met Connect. And you can adjust these to your liking as well. This will pull in those Met Connect fields that are available to map. Once we start up our calibration event, you will notice in our Cal Results tab, we have a new option now. Under this Fluke icon here, it will say Import Met Connect Results. Click on this to launch the project, and then hit Import MetCal Results. If you make a successful connection, it will then bring up a drop-down with work orders to choose from. Choose your work order and hit Get Results to bring in those data points. This screen under MetCal points will give you a quick overview so you can review the points that you are bringing into your event. And then the last step is to hit Import. You'll get a prompt like such showing how many records have been imported. In my case, it is 5, and they will automatically populate in your calibration results test point grid. Your last step is to finish off this report. And then you should be all good to go. You can go back into the event and view the data if necessary, and also view the certificate with the updated points. Now I'm going to pass this off to Evan.
Thanks, Angelina, and hi everyone. My name is Evan Matoski and I work here at IndySoft. And today I'd like to go over a cool new feature we have with test points and how we can recover them from a calibration event that maybe gets cut short a little early. If, let's say, the client accidentally closes, or if there's some issue where you get disconnected from the database. So let me go ahead and show you. Here I have 3 test points on this piece of equipment, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go ahead into a calibration event. And I'm going to just click over to the test points tab. And I will go ahead and enter in some real basic test point information. 3, 2. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is pretend that the client got disconnected for some reason. Let's just go ahead and kill it. And let me go ahead and open the client back up. Now what I can do, I'm going to go back to that same piece of equipment, and I'm going to jump back into a calibration event, and again go to the test points tab. As you can see, there's nothing here. But what you can do now is right-click and recover lost calibration results from today. So I go ahead and click on this, and then recover calibration data found from May 13th at 8:20. So if you were to put in any test point information here and you go to recover, it will overwrite it. So if you have anything you don't want it overwritten, just continue just manually typing it in, or you can recover it. So if I go ahead and press yes, you can see those test points came back in, and what you thought once was lost has now been found. Now I'm going to have Mitch talk about a cool new feature that we have using Google Maps. Take it away, Mitch.
Thank you, Evan. We appreciate you showing us that. Next up, I want to show you all our new Google Maps feature that we've embedded into the application. And this does actually two things for you. The first thing that this new Google Maps feature does is when you're in your company or advanced company search tool, we've always had the capability where you can filter this and look for your companies or your sites based off of any of these fields. So let's just say I want to filter down to which customers are in South Carolina. So my results grid filters based off of that. However, we actually have this new icon here to draw a Google map. Okay, so if we select this, what that's going to do is go pull up the IndySoft mapping utility. And based on the parameters of my advanced search tool, I'm going to be able to see the companies in my database that meet that criteria. So you can zoom in, zoom out, treat this very much like you would truly Google Maps through. And it's also kind of neat because then you can come over to the address list side and see, who met those parameters that are inside of there. So it's a neat feature just for anyone really to use, but particularly on commercial labs, because as you're doing like delivery routes and pickups and scheduling on sites, like looking at things on a map may help your coordinators to make those better decisions. Okay. What you can also do in here, I do want to show you this, particularly for our commercial labs, is if you go to our settings, we're going to give you the option to show the company name, the full name, or there's actually even an option in there to show both. We do that because some of our commercial labs, you're going to list out a customer number, not necessarily just a company name. So we're going to give you either option there to see that. But the first option here on showing these Google Maps is when you're in the advanced company search criteria, you can just simply draw a map based off of the filter results that you've shown. Now, the second area that we've made this visible, and I'm a huge fan of this one, this is in our Equipment Finder tool. Okay, so let's open up Equipment Finder, and let me just I think I've got a due in 180 days filter here. So I'm looking essentially for anything that's due in the next 180 days, and we'll just go ahead and look for active tools as well. So I'm going to select that. So I've got 300 pieces of equipment, and those are going to be split across a handful of different companies. So if you look through my grid over here, I've got several different companies. But what we allow you to do is actually draw that map now. Okay, so you can draw this from within Equipment Finder as well. And what that's going to do is show you the actual companies that have gauges due within that time frame, and it's even going to put a count onto the calendar for you. Okay, so for like my Boeing Charleston site, they just have one gauge due. But if I kind of zoom out and I'll look at my other data sources here, I've got a handful of other companies in here. And so I can actually look at this and say, okay, well, which companies have items coming due within that date range that I put in. So again, same concept as before. We're going to quickly be able to toggle over to the address list and see the company name and what the equipment counts are there. You also have the ability to toggle between company name, full name, just like what I previously showed you. But the whole concept is we want to give you really the capability to make better business decisions on when you're scheduling on sites, when you're scheduling your pickups, scheduling your deliveries. Hopefully this mapping tool will help out and make that process a little bit easier for you. So if you have any questions on this, just please don't hesitate to reach out. And next up, Mike is going to be showing you our new loop calibration capability functions that we've added in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Loop calibration is another cool feature we've added to 12.1. This functionality allows us to associate children equipment with a parent asset to perform one calibration event on the parent and then service the children all within that one event. how this works is we set up the children equipment first, and we've added a couple new features here to the Child Equipment Association to allow us to select the associated equipment worksheet as well as the test point tab that you might be using for that particular asset. So on the right side here, you'll see the children relationships here, but we've also added a flowchart tab that allows you to give a visual representation of maybe how the items should be serviced and in what order. And we can simply drag and drop the children here onto the flowchart to change the order in which these might be displayed. You also have some controls out here to create a starter flowchart, which is going to look just like this flowchart here. You might even toggle off your arrows if you wanted to, and when I recreate now, you'll see no arrows. Or we could also come into a flowchart editor here that we have that gives you a lot of different tools to kind of build your flowchart however you want to make it look. So once we have that built, we also have a checkbox here to designate that this parent is a loop calibration parent. That's going to be very important when you launch your calibration event. I'll show you in Workflow Config how we set these loop calibration events up. Only assets that have that loop calibration checkbox checked are going to be allowed to be selected into our loop calibration event. So in Workflow Configuration, we have a loop calibration event that I've simply cloned from our existing calibration event. But what you'll notice on step 3 event tabs, we also have some new options here. So we're going to set this event up as a loop calibration. And then we're going to come back to this because I'll show you in the event what these mean. But the child assets with tabs, we have some options. Child assets without tabs. We can also override, schedule updates, the history log that's going to occur for each asset. We also have that flowchart that's going to be able to be saved to each asset as well. So when I run my loop calibration event, I'm going to get a couple things that come up here. So the event information screen itself, you're going to see a tab across the bottom for that parent. There's going to be test points that are going to be associated with that loop calibration itself. But then you might also, in the course of your loop calibration, identify that there's other pieces or the children that need to be serviced. So this menu here allows us to then select that maybe I'm going to calibrate child asset A within this loop calibration. So by choosing that item, you'll see it's added my tab for my child asset, and it's also brought up my worksheet for that asset if I needed that for reference. But you'll see I have some test points for that child asset. And once I finish this asset here, let me fill in some information here. Once that calibration finishes for that child asset A, it now takes me back to my loop calibration to complete my test points here. You might have additional assets that you are also calibrating within this event as well. But once I finish the loop calibration event, I'm going to simply finish this, and we have some other fields that are required here. So this is going to create a schedule for that loop calibration event, or for that asset. But it's also going to create some history logs under our child assets here. So you'll notice on my child asset A, I have two different kinds of loop service or loop calibration. I have a loop service event, which indicates that that asset was calibrated during the course of that loop calibration. And you'll see it has its own certificate. And then it also has a loop usage, which indicates that that item was part of that loop calibration as well. So that is the certificate for that loop calibration. And I also have that flow chart that was related to that loop calibration. And I can even click these, and it's going to take me to each of those assets. So that is a live flow chart there that can quickly take me to those assets. The same as you might do under your child equipment associations here to quickly jump between them. So back on the workflow configuration. So these overrides allow us to, you might have schedule updates or equipment updates, any of that kind of stuff that happens in your regular calibration event. Allow us to bypass those when this is part of the loop calibration, if those items are being serviced during the course of that loop calibration. Of course, all items that are part of that loop calibration, whether they're serviced or not, are going to have schedule updates and history logs logged by default if these options are not turned on. So that just gives us a little more control there and allows us to quickly calibrate groups of items in sequence and kind of keep everything organized. Now I'm going to pass it over to Henry, who will be talking about a cool new feature for our web tier customers, sticky sessions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Latze. My name is Henry Arth, account manager here at IndySoft. I hope you all are safe and healthy out there. Today I wanted to show you something that we call sticky sessions. For those of you who use the IndySoft cloud services, or perhaps you're hosting your own web tier environment, you may have found that if you lost internet connection and you were in the middle of doing a calibration with 150 test points, or you were in the middle of reformatting your certificate, once you lost the internet connection, you'd be kicked out of your session and never get back in, and you'd have to redo all the work that you did all over again. So you may have been kind of mad at us at that point. So for that reason, we came up with something called sticky sessions. Sticky sessions allow you to get launched back in right where you left off. So I've got a lot to talk about in only a little bit of time here, so let's just move on. There are a lot of features that actually go around it. The first one you're seeing right here, a new login screen for your web tier environment or your cloud environment. An updated feel and look for your customers who are logging and showing them that you're investing in your software and in your business in a good way. So that's a good start. Of course, you can modify that logo at the top. You can put yours there, rebrand everything. You'll also notice below that you can log in not just with your username, which for your read-only customers may be a little bit cryptic, and they might not always remember it, but they can log in with their email too. So every user that uses sticky sessions in this format is going to need to have a unique email associated with their user. We'll get into that in a little bit. You've also got to reset your password section, some more branding behind the scenes there, because every single time somebody presses reset your password, you can actually modify the exact layout that they receive with your logo, make it a little bit of a nicer, sexier appearance. So, in the lower left-hand corner, something you're very used to seeing, the signed in with Google Authentication. Yep, we're doing that now. So let's just go ahead and try that one out. We'll log in, and then we'll do a couple of simulations. I'm going to go in here. So this is actually pushing me into my own Windows session. We're not sharing Windows sessions anymore in sticky sessions. That's how we're pulling it off. And it's also pushing me directly into the software. So now that we're in, another thing to kind of go over, because everybody has their own unique session, when you get kicked off the internet and you have to go back in, we have to guarantee that it's you. So the way that we handle, multiple sessions for the same user. So in the older version, you may have been opening a separate tab and pressing a new tab and having two windows open and maybe even two different browser screens so you could look at your work order system and your equipment view. But now we're doing that a little bit differently. You can actually go down here, right click, and you can launch another IndySoft session. What that's actually going to do is launch one directly in the exact same browser screen, which is actually, in my opinion, pretty nice if you wanted to look, again, at the order system and look at your equipment view and kind of compare things back and forth. So a really nice feature. You can actually do that vertically, horizontally. You can cascade it. There are other options with arranging the active sessions, but not too much time to go into that here. If I wanted to go back to one screen, I can X out of there, double click, and I'm back. So a little bit of a different feature set there. The other thing we're going to do, I'm going to simulate an ungraceful disconnect from the system, but I'm going to make sure I pull up something that you wouldn't normally see when you log in. So I'm going to go to my user location preferences. I'm going to keep that open. Oh, I lost internet connection, kicked out of the session. What are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to log in again. I'm going to go back to Ben's Nerd House, pop in there, and actually in this scenario, my browser remembers that my username and password automatically. And you can see I'm pushed back in the same session. My user location settings are still up. Press save and close. You'll also notice that this pops into an actual, it's not the full screen mode here. You can double click to push it back there, but basically what we're doing there, we're not going back to that other method because this actually ensures that we're keeping this on the screen exactly where we want it. So resetting it fresh every time. So double click on that. So we're back in our session. It's great. We didn't lose our test points. We didn't lose anything behind the scenes. Couple other things to note before I push everything over here to Mike Lynn. If we go into Profile Manager, when you turn on sticky sessions, you would actually be resetting everybody's password. So what does that look like? It sounds pretty scary actually. But I'm going to go ahead and try to remember my username and password here. The great news is that that's going to allow you to enforce password policy. Before, we didn't have a way for you to reset everybody's passwords to follow that. Now we have an option when you turn it on, and we can say that Windows, because it has to meet a Windows policy as well as your IndySoft policy. They need to both be met. So if I press create web tier credentials for all users, that's going to send an email to every single user who has an email to actually give them a temporary password to log in and reset their password with that new protocol. So super easy to manage there. The other thing that you have is, how do I set everybody's emails? I got to go into the add edit list for employees. Well, great thing here for you. I go to password settings, and I have a few more features. And when I press allow login from email address or username, I can actually pop in here and I can see every single user and sort by users and sort by who has emails and who doesn't. If there are duplicate emails, again, you have to have unique emails, but if you have duplicate emails, it's going to highlight them in red so you can change them and find them super easily. And if they don't have emails, you can actually add it right in this window. And when you add it in there, it adds it to the associated employee field in a super easy way to manage your emails when you turn this on. So anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the webinar. I'm going to push it over to Mike Lynn for some conditional formatting fun.
Hello, I'm Mike Lynn, Corporate Metrologist here at IndySoft. I'm going to show you the new conditional formatting capabilities in our latest release. This is very similar to the conditional formatting you may have used in many commercially available spreadsheets such as Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. To access this feature, you just right-click in most any grid in the system and select conditional formatting. The only exception to this is the test points because of the way that they're structured and used in the system. But all of the equipment history grids, the order system grids, and even the equipment finder allow for conditional formatting. For this example, I'm going to use the equipment finder, and as you can see, I've got a selection of gauges that I've collected here. So what we'll do is we'll right click and select conditional formatting, and that opens the formatting rules manager. And again, this is very similar to what you may have seen in Microsoft Excel. So let's say that we want to highlight the items that are past due for calibration in our list and those items that are coming up due for calibration. So basically we'll create a new rule. we'll select format only the cells that contain, and for the items that are overdue, we want to say less than today. So we'll use the today function from the system, and we'll format, and we'll put those as red. Let's make them really red. Say OK. So then you come over here to the applies to, and we tell it which field we're going to look at in our grid. As you see, it shows all of the different fields in the grid. So we'll say calibration due is less than today. And you say apply. So you can see everything that was past due now has turned red. Now let's say I want to show everything that's going to be due in the next week or so. So we can use the same format, only this time we're going to say between today and today plus 7 days. And we're going to change those into yellow so that we can see that they're a warning coming up due for Cal. Say OK. Again, you change the cell or the field that it applies to, calibration due, and then we apply. So now you see it's highlighted everything that's due in the next week. Now let's say, for instance, we wanted to look at our list here and highlight everything that had failed. So we'll do the format cells contain, and we'll say equal to 1. In the system behind the scenes, the results are 1 through 5. So let's see, we're going to apply 1 to the last calibration result. Oh, and I forgot to change the color format, and we'll make that sort of a lighter color. And you say OK. Now we apply, and now you can see that we've highlighted all these faileds here. Another thing you can do is use a formula. These are probably the ones that you'll use the most, would be cells that contain and then the formula. In this particular case, we want to highlight everything that was, say, a manufacturer of Agilent, let's say. So if you use the bracket and start typing the name of the field that contains the data you're interested in, we start typing manufacturer, you can see it automatically filled in. That was the only cell that had, or the only field that had MAN. So it filled out and pre-selected the manufacturer. I'm going to say equals, using the text, call it Agilent. If I could spell. And we're going to turn these purple. You say OK. So now we've said formula is Agilent. And if we say apply, you can see what it is. It highlighted the first cell in here. But we want to highlight the entire record. So we'll hit this checkbox. So as you can see, the only time that this box applies to the whole record is when you have some type of formula here. That's when it'll highlight the entire thing. So then we say apply. So now you can see everything that was Agilent is now highlighted. We've highlighted all the failed calibrations, and we can see what's overdue and what's due for calibration or coming due. Now, the thing to remember here is that this won't save unless you save your grid settings. Save for current user or save to all users. Once you do that, then this set of conditionals is saved to this grid only. So if I go to another grid, it will not have this same settings. You can have different settings for the different grids depending on what's going on with them. So the next time I bring up the equipment finder, you'll see that it's kept all that conditional formatting because I saved it. This is just a brief example of the kind of things you can do with the conditional formatting, and I'm sure you can come up with many more. But next on deck is Will, who's going to cover the new Uncertainty Budget Importer.
Thanks for that, Mike. What I'm going to be looking at is how we can now import a basic uncertainty budget from Excel. So what you'll do is launch your uncertainty module. And what I've set up here is just a basic budget to demonstrate the idea. We've got a couple of master rules. We've got an R&R study, but no contributing items yet. And this is the part that people all hate. So now what you can do is go to Options, Import Contributing Items from Excel, and you'll be prompted to import an XLSX file. That means no macros involved. And that's going to pop up this new dialog. Your first step is going to be to select which sheet actually has your budget. So in this case, I'll take this one. And in addition, you're going to want to select the region that has your uncertainty information. So for example, here I've got all my data here. If you choose top row as a header on your next step, you'll actually get nice little captions. So we'll do that. On the next step, what you'll do then is actually choose to map things out. So for example, my contributor name, that's column C. Then by the same token, I could choose column D first and say that's my type. We can go to the uncertainty limits. That's your estimated error. I've got a unit of measure, distribution, a confidence level, coverage factor, standard deviation in parameter units. I'll skip that. We've got degrees of freedom. We want to make sure that's a number, sensitivity coefficient, and last but not least, our overall standard uncertainty. You can skip what you want, so you'll see I've skipped the identifier. Then it's going to confirm we don't have any contributing items. We're about to create 13 of them. So when I do that, I can say finish. The next thing it's going to do is pop up. And so for each line, it's going to give you an option, if it's relevant, to say, is this just a straight budget value? Is this coming from the gauge spec? Is this pulling from one of your master's specs? Or is this a study? So for example, UUT resolution, that would really be the gauge spec. And you can actually type in what the spec is. So I could say resolution. And this will actually stub out your code. So it'll say the estimated error. We're going to look up resolution from the spec gauge and pull the rest of the values from above as normal. And we'll hit OK. I can do the same thing with a master. So this might be specification, semicolon, sensor, and that'll now do a lookup spec master. We could also pull from the R&R study. That'll just look up that R&R study. Or we could just do a basic budget value, in which point it's going to pull from that estimated error. So I'm just going to go ahead and step through these. And now we have 13 contributing items. And you can see we've got these pre-populated with stub code. You will certainly need to probably review these, make some modifications, so on and so forth. But at least you've got a base working value that you can go from. The other thing you'll notice now is your correlation is the root sum square for all those items. So you've got a basic budget in place now, and you can go ahead and extend it as needed. With that said, I'll now hand it over to Ben, who's going to show you the REST API.
Thanks, Will. So now I'd like to show us around a very powerful new option that we have for a REST API. So there's an extreme amount of detail that can be shown here, but in general terms, this REST API just enables you from any outside tool that can make REST calls to return records from the IndySoft database, check for the existence of records, also do inserts, updates, and deletes. So there's a Swagger UI that ships with this to show you the different available endpoints that we have. And basically, it starts with every single table in the database. So you can see just the wealth of different endpoints that you have. Every one of these has the ability to do a get, post, put, delete, patch type of call against these tables. And not just base tables, there's some very specific endpoints that are put in here, and this library is going to continue to grow. This same REST API is actually what we use currently in version 12 for doing our cloud logins. It's also the same power that we use behind the scenes for our mobile apps, like on Android and iOS. So a lot of power that we're trying to open up to our end users. So the very good news on this is that it's all driven from the application server that you already have set up, like for web tier tools or for doing 3-tier connections. So you don't have to have a new address, don't have to open up a new port, can run HTTPS just as your application server is currently running. Just go to REST server settings, turn on this enable Indy Data REST module button. The REST module is going to open up its own database connections as needed. So this pool size is just a maximum number of connections that it will use for its own purposes. And it includes its own Java Web Token. So it's got its own token flow for this. So if you have somebody internally that's used to writing these REST calls, this will all be familiar to them. So the first thing that they would do would be go to the login service type endpoint, and then they pass along a username and password. And then if that is correct, then we'll respond with a web token. And that web token is what's put into the header on all future commands to authenticate them. So very secure. But in addition to having these web tokens, which is just how web traffic is done, that username and password also has to map back to a profile of the system that even allows communication with the REST API. So there's a new security option in Profile Manager, and by default, this one's turned on to block everyone. So you don't have to worry about turning this on the application server and then just a whole bunch of people, even internally, trying to get in and do these commands. You can pick who has the ability to do this. But once you get past the security part of this, then you can hit any table in the system, and like the employee table is an easy example, and you can do get, post, put, delete type of commands here. Like say we wanted to, just as a very simple example, say we want to add in a new employee called ABC User 1. And we don't have one that exists here. I have an ABC User 2. Let me delete that. So ABC User 1, let's just add him in here. So we could do a command to show all the employees in the system. And so it'll volunteer the curl command that you would use to do that. Just returns all the records in JSON. So then let's add in one record. That is ABC User 1. So you could say try it out, and I've already pasted in my particular values here. So the Swagger UI volunteers the structure for you, and so all we have to do is execute that. So it'll give you the command that you would use. So now this employee exists in the database. I could go in here and confirm this. ABC User 1, so now we have Tom Collins. So then the API can update this record or it could delete it. Like here, let's get rid of this ABC User 1. So the response there, 204, everything is good. So now this employee has been deleted from the system. So you can imagine the power that could be the power behind all this. You could hit the equipment table, gauges, and you could fetch records that have a particular status, set them as inactive. Really, sky's the limit here. In addition to having endpoints that correspond to all the different tables in the system, There's also some specific commands in here in the library, and this library is going to be continually growing. Like as an example, there's already an equipment transfer service. So you can use this for changing the ID on a company if you want to rename it, or you could move it between different companies or change the ID while you're moving it to a different company. There's a lot of logic that needs to happen behind the scenes whenever IndySoft does this. So now you can just use a REST call to let IndySoft do the heavy lifting there on that call. So the Swagger UI just illustrates how to do the commands, but you can test this really in any tool that you're used to for creating REST calls. Like if you're used to doing this in Postman, then you can do the same type of thing that I just demonstrated there for hitting the login service, doing a post to return a token, and then use that token to do like get calls against employees or try to find an employee that has a particular record. All these same kind of commands can be done. So a lot that can be accomplished here. We'd love to talk with you and give you more details, but I'm going to stop right there and pass it along to Adam, who's going to close us out and show us a couple of quick features that I think you're going to like.
Thanks, Ben. This is Adam Waymer, Director of Customer Success here at IndySoft, and I'm going to take you through some quick quality of life changes we've made in the software. First one, company full name. I'm sitting here on Acme Manufacturing, and if I switch over to ABC Company, you'll note ABC Company is now the company that goes all the way through the alphabet. That's about 70 some odd characters, but it's at 100 characters is our max limit now. I know we have had a few requests for that. Another element I'm going to show is how to pull masters that are most recently used. We get the request that perhaps you have a technician's on site, he's got his standard there, and he's just using that same standard over and over for the course of the day, regardless of what equipment he might be calibrating. He's just got 100 of a certain item, and he's just using that same one over and over. So I'm going to go to this asset right here. I have previously calibrated it today, and you'll note I used this particular standard. When I go back to my ABC company, it's time to calibrate it. When I launch this calibration, same as you always would, going to come to your standard screen, same as you always would, you're going to notice a new option. Add masters from most recent calibration for current users. I could choose to add all, or I could do select, and it's available for me. So every time I launch a calibration for the rest of the day, if I've used one previously, it's going to be in that list for me to choose from. So I can very quickly pull it up and just keep moving. The next feature here, I think, is a really cool way of controlling visibility of your layouts. This can apply to your equipment. It can apply to events. I'm going to take you through a couple things here. So first thing I'm going to do is launch workflow configuration. There we go. And in workflow configuration, you're going to notice this new option under the drop down of global events layout. And I've already made one called Sysadmin Details. In the scenario I'm about to take you through, it's going to be as if I want my text to see one thing in the event, and then if I come in and look at it later, I want to have more visibility of some elements that they should never really see. So what I've done is I've created Sysadmin Details, and you'll notice it looks like any other layout you're used to interacting with. Let me clean this up here. I don't like that extra space. So just a couple extra fields of department branch and our start date and start time event fields. That's different than event date. Event date, you might have a user who's running a calibration and backdating it. These start dates and start times are set when they actually are starting it, and you don't really have to expose it for them. We're capturing that on the back end, but I might want to see it as an admin coming in there to review it. So let me close this here. So this is one unique layout. Let me save my changes in here. So for the event I'm pulling up, it's called conditional layout because I did that for demo purposes. I'm going to come in here into field settings and design layout. Now it looks exactly the same as you're used to seeing. Various fields. That's what the text's going to see, but you'll notice this new option here that says embed if equals system details elevated. That is a function that we have available over here. Let me shrink this down so it's a little bit easier to see. I'm working on a smaller layout than I'm used to, screen size. Under other here, I'm just going to search under embed. And you'll see there are a bunch of merge items already. These embeds are saying put that layout inside of here. But what I'm doing is this embed if function that is the template name, that Sysadmin Details you saw me have created a second ago, and the profile group, who I want to see it. And I'm going to talk about that profile group again in a second. So right now I have embed if equals to sysadmin details and elevate it. So let me close this here. So you know, when I launch the event, before I close it, you should see these fields, and then you should also see that other section I just created. So let me save this. Have a nice note. It makes more sense than that 1, 2, 3 I entered a second ago. But one real important thing, you notice I've mentioned that profile group. If you're not used to it or have never looked at it in Profile Manager, let me log in here real quick. I might have a variety of profiles. In this environment, I have a very stock config. I'm going to go to Profile Groups. What I can do is create a group of profile types. So I might want not just myself to see it, but the people that I trust as power users. They're not technically system admins. I don't let them see everything in the software the same way a system admin should be, but I've created a profile group for Elevated. The people I trust to view this type of thing that I'm going to expose. So you notice I have power user highlighted and system admin. So when I launch this event, miscellaneous, conditional layout, you'll notice I've got this event field section and I've got that other event field section. I can see those fields because I'm logged in as a system admin. But what happens when I log in as that tech? And I've got a very good test user for that, IndyTech. So when I launch into the events as a technician whose profile type is not part of that elevated group, oops, wrong event, sorry. All they see are the normal fields. That extra layout is invisible to them. So that's what that is controlling, that function, allowing you to add sections to an event to hide and show information based on what you want them to see. And there's a lot of variation on that. And we even have access to it in custom scripting because you may have logical scenarios where there's multiple things that need to be shown, multiple layouts. Maybe you want to have a section for the tech, section for QA, and section for just pure system admins, and have all those various fields exposed based on who's logging in. It's very powerful. I'm sure you'll see a Tip Tuesday coming on that at some point. But it's a lot of functionality there, and I'm a big fan of it. And again, you can put this into your equipment view. I believe it even works on the home layout, but I haven't done that myself. The next thing I'd like to show, search notes. This is a feature that is only available to MS SQL users. So if you're a Firebird database or Oracle database, this doesn't work, but majority of our customers are MS SQL, and as all of our cloud customers will be. So if you are a cloud customer with IndySoft, you absolutely have MS SQL. So this is just kind of nice where I'm going to pull up Equipment Finder. And I am going to do an advanced search. So I can go to Notes, is not empty, or Contains now. So let's say I was looking for any asset that had these in the notes. There's only one asset, test asset A. And you'll note, I'm going to close this, these are the notes that I am searching on. So I'll do it again just to show you because I couldn't remember what sentence I had even put in there in the first place. So let's try this again. Notes, contains, these are notes. And again, that asset comes up, some gibberish, not going to return anything. So if you have any information that is common, if you're the type of individual who uses note types and there are some common notes you're always throwing into assets, that might be one way of you going in there and narrowing down equipment and pulling it up. You could search on the note type containing that information. Just a real nice feature, quality of life stuff. And my favorite quality of life feature that I'm going to show, and the last thing I'm going to show, is our new single company and equipment ID. So you probably use barcode or are familiar with barcoding in our software, where you can scan a barcode and it pulls in that ID information and allows you to pull it up in the software. Traditionally, that operates in an event by saying you are on a particular company. Let me find a good multi-gauge event for this. So you're used to saying, okay, I'm on company ABC company, scanning in my barcodes, and it'll bring in the assets for that company that exists with that barcode ID. We have a new feature that you can adjust your stickers and your barcodes to have the information contain company and the ID. So I'm going to come into Print Builder real quick and look at stickers. All right. Company ID barcode test. That's probably a good one to check with. So you'll notice that there are two barcodes on here. One that you're probably used to seeing with no information, and then this other one that has the company and that tilde. We use that as the delimiter, so we know when we're scanning this in what represents the company and what represents the ID. When you look at this option here, the DB barcode, this tree needs to expand a little bit. Let me stretch this to show it better. 1 second. There we go. So you're used to having a barcode like this. Sticker and ID in the tree. But you can choose this new option of Equip Single ID. And what that means is it's going to include the company. So anytime you scan that barcode going forward, it's going to know what company you're in. So let's say you have a receiving event, and for some reason you're getting assets in from multiple customers in that one receiving event. Let's say one company has 3 branches, and you keep them as 3 different companies in IndySoft. You can scan all of them in, and it will know the appropriate company and ID to bring that in. Just a nice quality of life feature. That's also true anywhere you might do some barcode scanning on searches in the software. It's just a very quick change on your layout. And then as you print them out going forward, it will update. I hope you enjoy that. If you've got any questions on any of these, just let us know, of course, and we'll be happy to help. All right, it looks like we used up all our time today on demos. We had a lot to show, so unfortunately we won't be able to discuss any of the questions that came in. If you've submitted a question, don't worry, we're going to reach out and answer you as soon as we possibly can. And if for some reason, after sleeping on this, digesting anything you saw today, if you got any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to email support@indysoft.com, and we will be happy to answer and help. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope you have a great week. Stay safe.